Attendance is just great. And I want to also thank everyone for coming to AFO this year. And just, please give everyone a round of applause. Woo! My name is Ben, aka Temjin, or Uber from Uberscosplay. And this is my lovely assistant.
You can just call me Star.
This is kind of a two-part thing because without her, I would not be able to get anywhere near the convention center, much less have someone open doors, clear crowds, or strap me into this monstrosity. So, trust me, she needs a lot more credit than she really gets. So, everyone give her a round of applause too. And she's also really good with PowerPoint and Photoshop, so you can thank her for the presentation too. All right. So I've been doing conventions since about 2008, but I haven't really been cosplaying that long. I've only been cosplaying giant robots since about early 2012 and late 2011. My first costume was the original Gundam you see there on the side, and then the Galgaigar in the middle. Actually, I managed to get to AX with that one, so that was a blast. And then most recently, this guy, the Alt-Eisen from Super Robot Wars. If you guys have ever seen pictures online of crazy costumes of giant robots, it's almost always two guys. It's Clive Lee. He's just like a god when it comes to giant robot costumes. He's especially famous for the one you see here, the Gundam unicorn ones. He's judged tons of different contests, won tons of different contests, and he's just damn good at what he does. So I would also recommend that if any of you guys are interested in either trying to build your own costumes or just interested in seeing more like it, Clive Lee is the guy to go to. And of course also, the godfather of mecha costuming is Goldie. Goldie's been into it for a very long time. He's very well known for his Gurren Lagann, which has been at AX and tons of other cons, both in Japan and Asia and here in America. Both these guys, I recommend you look them up on Facebook. Clive Lee actually did a very nice full tutorial on how to make a very basic giant robot costume that you can find on his DeviantArt page. It's a great resource if you're looking to get into this hobby. Alright, so I guess first step when you're trying to do a costume like this is choosing what mech you want to do. And it's pretty simple in this regard because, well, what do you like? What's your favorite design? Where it gets a little more complicated is how well you can translate that design to a human body. Because a lot of these things kind of have really exaggerated proportions, either huge shoulders, really long legs, tiny little heads, huge oversized weapons. And so that's where it starts to get a little more interesting. And then it's also a matter of how much time, money, and materials you have to work with. Because honestly, you can do a lot with not very much as long as you're smart with what you're using. All right. First, right off the bat is Pepakura. Pepakura is a 3D unfolding program for paper models. This is a really popular program that's used by a lot of armor makers for either Halo suits, Mass Effect suits. I've seen people use it to make Skyrim props. And what you can basically do with this program is you can import a 3D model either from a video game or like a Blender, a 3D modeling program. And the program will essentially let you break down the model into flat pieces that you can then print out on a regular paper printer, and then you can transfer those either to a different medium or go with fiberglass from that point. And it's a really good starting point, in my opinion. If you can get access to a 3D model for what you're trying to do, I think it's always better to have it. Though you can do a lot of stuff freehand, me personally, I prefer to have something to look at to base it on.
Think of it like a pattern for any sort of clothing you would wear. A lot of people question why you do that before, just like a pattern.
All right, planning. Jesus. I'm going to take back what I said about the Photoshop. All right, planning ahead is pretty much just what it says. Planning ahead. Collect as much reference material of whatever you're trying to make as you can. Pictures, DVDs of the animation, I find it's really, really helpful to have either a model kit or a toy, especially. And materials, as much as you can, once you decide on what your material is going to be, try to have as much as you think you'll need for the project before you get started, because believe me, there's nothing worse than being on the last part and then you realize you're completely out of glue or plastic or anything, and oh, the store's closed and the event is tomorrow.
Yep.
Also, if you have the option, try to shop in bulk. For a lot of these materials, I'm going to list out like some different places or websites where you can buy the material in bulk, and it's always a cheaper option. And also, it's good to have extras because you will inevitably either have parts break or need to be redone, or something unforeseen always happens, and so it's always good to have extras. Sketching out schematics, patterns, and planning every detail. Just as it says, for pretty much everything I did here, I had a sketchbook and pictures of my own body, which I would draw on top of in pencil just to plan out where everything would be, what parts look like they're going to bump together that might need to be changed, things like that. Just try to think like what things you think you'll have problems with before you encounter them, and try to, nip it in the bud early. And of course, make sure you really like that robot, because 9 months down the line, after you've been wearing them for a few weeks, you're going to be kind of sick of them. So make sure you really like them. All right. This is the meat and potatoes of the panel. Materials. There are tons and tons of different materials out there you can build your costumes out of. There's a lot more options nowadays than there were a few years ago, too. All of them tend to have their own strengths and weaknesses, and then of course there's always the matter of what's available, what you can get access to, and what you can work with in the space you have. When you're using something you've never used before, I would always recommend you get a little bit of it first and play around with it before you commit to buying a lot of it. I mean, I've made that mistake plenty of times and bought tons of plastic I thought would be perfect for an application. Didn't end up working, and now it's sitting in my closet at home just waiting for me to find something to do with it. All right, this is a really, really popular material that a lot of people use in cosplay for a ton of different applications. It's a craft foam or EVA foam. It's a semi-rigid foam that varies in thickness either from 1 millimeter up to like 1/2 inch or a full inch. And if you've ever seen the guys walking around at cons, like in either Mass Effect armor or anything like that, that's a go-to material for EVA. A lot of guys make Iron Man suits and things out of it. Advantages is it's relatively cheap, and it can be found just about any home improvement store or craft store. Craft stores sell it as a foamies brand, which is sold in packs of various colors. So depending on your project, you might not even have to paint if you like the finish of the stuff, because it already comes in so many colors. The thicker kinds, which are there at the bottom, you can see, they're sold as floor mats for workspace or for yoga mats, and they're usually sold in packs of 4 interlocking panels. You can get them very cheap at most home improvement stores. If you've got a Harbor Freight around, they constantly send you these little coupons in the mail. You can get a pack of 4 for sometimes $10 with a coupon. And honestly, 4 is all I needed for this costume since I don't use too much EVA. A good example of EVA is the thighs on this guy here. Hang on a moment. Yeah. EVA is always a good option for any kind of part that has to move around a lot. Because it's somewhat soft, it's not going to get damaged. I can move my legs around, it can bump into parts, and it's not going to get messed up. It's just going to move with whatever motion I do. It does have a few disadvantages, and this is kind of the reason I don't use it too much. It has to be sealed before you can paint it. You can't just put spray paint on it, because it's like a sponge. It'll just soak it up, and it'll look, well, like a sponge. It'll look like a really awful painted sponge. There are a few different materials you can use to seal it. You can either seal with Elmer's glue, Mod Podge, or what I like to use is Plasti-Dip. Plasti-Dip's kind of a newer material, but it is getting pretty popular. It's a spray-on plastic rubber coating. A lot of people use it on the rims for cars to change the color. And actually, Rust-Oleum, I just noticed, got into the game, and Rust-Oleum sells their own brand of it now, and it's at Home Depot, and it's in tons of different colors. So you can get the stuff at Home Depot now. But if you want to get the plastic dip kind, they have more range of colors. You can go to dipyourcar.com, and they'll send you whatever you want, and 1 or 2 cans maybe to test with it, see how you like it. And that does you a dual purpose of it seals it and it paints it. So you get two birds with one stone on that. Now, the other disadvantage of it does not breathe well. If you make a suit entirely out of EVA, you will be sweating to death by the end of the day. It's just like wearing an oven. So take that into account when you decide to use this material. And lastly, you can sand EVA. You can sand it with a Dremel or with a sanding block, but the dust it produces can be dangerous. So if you're going to do that, make sure you're wearing a mask and that you clean up all the dust it makes, because that can be very dangerous. Okay, go ahead and we're going to move on. Cardboard. Cardboard gets kind of a bad rap because a lot of people just throw something together with what they found and then it falls apart by the end of the weekend. But if you take your time on it, you can make something out of cardboard that actually looks really, really good. The advantages is it's fairly cheap and easy to acquire. You can get it just about anywhere. It's very easy to cut and bond. Hot glue is more than enough. And it's ideal for quick builds and mock-ups. If you want to do something quick, or you just want to put together a part, say, how will this look before I do it in a bigger part or out of a more expensive material, this is the go-to. Disadvantages, a lot of them are pretty obvious for this. It's not very durable, it's easily damaged by moisture, and if it is left untreated. Basically, if you make a suit out of cardboard, my first Gundam torso was kind of that kind of paper material. If you sweat in it, you're going to ruin it eventually. So you have to do something to seal it, either paint it, or make sure you seal all the edges and everything with some kind of tape or something. Then also, cardboard rarely lasts through more than one con without needing serious repairs, if not outright replacement. My Gundam torso, first one I actually replaced 3 different times because just it got banged up after each and every time I'd use it. And the other problem you'll run into is cardboard has those ridges in it, which is what gives it the strength. When you paint that, those ridges are still there, and it kind of makes it kind of look bad unless you somehow hide it. Either you cover it with paper, or you cover the outside with Bondo or something, and you smooth it. So you'll have to take that into account. This is what I use cardboard for more than anything, is making mock-ups. Like the Gundam torso there, that's not the one I used. That's just, I built it to see if it would fit and if it looked right. So afterwards, that went straight in the trash. The one you see there next to it is the torso for a Mike Saunders costume I made for Shirley over here. Sorry, I forgot our handle. I don't know who you are on the internet. Why would I talk to you on the internet? I live with you. I go on the internet to get away from you. Well, she's on the internet to get away from me, let's face facts. Locks herself in the bedroom and get me away from this robot. Alright. Go back. So yeah, and if you're making a large prop, cardboard is actually a good go-to as well. That box you see down there, that's the start of my Goldian hammer for Galgagar. Not the strongest material, but when it's that big, you know, even just made out of cardboard, that thing was over 40 pounds. So take weight into account. Cardboard, it's very hard to get lighter than that. Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. Foam core board. If you have to do cardboard builds, I recommend you do it in this instead. Foam core is so much better, in my opinion, than cardboard. The advantages is it's got a smooth finish, no ridges or anything in it, and it's very easy to paint. It's tougher than cardboard and easily just as light. And what you can do is you get these tools at the bottom. These are called Foamworks cutters. You can get them from foamboardsource.com as well as the material. These cutters, they'll cut like either perfectly angled 45-degree cuts or V-channels for you to fold the part. So you could just have it all out on a single piece, your part, use these cutters, and then fold it together and bond.
I'm the only Levi!
So it's a great material. It's cheap. Even if you can't buy it online, you can go to like Michael's or any kind of art store, and it's like those presentation boards you would use in high school or middle school. That's this kind of material. It has some of the same disadvantages as cardboard though. It's not waterproof unless it's sealed, so you'll have to either paint it or make sure the edges are sealed. What I usually do is I paint it and then I seal the edge with paper masking tape and paint that. That keeps any water from getting into it. And it's tougher than cardboard, but it's still not super durable. If you take a spill in it, it's going to get messed up. Alright? Here's some examples of what you can build with foam core board. On the one side there, you have my beam rifle from the Gundam. That's just made by tracing out the pattern onto foam board and then cutting along with the V-groove cutters from Foamworks and folding along the edge of the gun to make the shape. And the barrel and the scope and the butt of the rifle were just made with cones of styrofoam that was then sealed with Mod Podge and painted and airbrushed, and that's what I ended up with. The shield is made from foam core board as well, just to keep it light. And you can see there how the edges are yellow tape. That's masking tape, just to hide any edge. Any questions so far in regards to those materials? All right.
I don't have a question, but I have a fun fact.
Go for it.
The foam, the first one, the EVA foam.
Yeah.
If you go to preschool supply stores, they sell them in much bigger packages for much cheaper.
See, I didn't know that, and I worked with you.
Yeah, because my mom.
Why did you tell me 9 months ago?
I didn't know that's what you were using, and you used the perfect picture. I'm like, wait, my mom has it in preschool.
See, I actually don't run into the color stuff too much because I'm shopping at the wrong place. All right, next one. This one is also used by a lot of cosplayers, is fiberglass. Fiberglass is the tough stuff. This is what they use to repair cars, boats, all kinds of stuff. It's basically a 3-part mixture. You have the fiberglass mat, you have the resin, which toughens up the mat, and then you have Bondo, which you put on the outside to smooth it all out. So right off the bat, it's going to be a longer process. The advantage is it's ultra strong and durable. When you layer this stuff, it's as tough as a car body. You can just smash it with a hammer a lot of times, and it's just going to take some scuffs, especially if you do a lot of layers of it. The other advantage, it's water and chemical proof. You can sweat all day in it. It's going to be fine. There's nothing that's going to hurt it except, make sure you wash it out eventually because it's going to start to smell. The other advantage is because it's a mat, it can conform to almost any shape. So, like if you were making a pepakura base, if you were to put it inside, it could conform to almost any shape, especially when you have the resin to it because it's going to stick to just about anything. And it's also it can smooth to a mirror finish. If you do it long enough with the Bondo, you might have seen a lot of guys do the Daft Punk helmets, and they get the chrome look. I can almost guarantee you that 90% of those underneath that's just Bondo. They've smoothed and smoothed and smoothed and painted black and then chromed. Disadvantages is when you layer this, it gets to be very heavy and very solid. The disadvantage of it being solid is you'll have some trouble tossing it in a car and just getting it to the location. And that's where I kind of start to run into problems. Like with the EVA suit, you can kind of just toss it in the car and go. None of it's going to get messed up since it's all going to just bend and move. The fiberglass stuff is going to be kind of harder to work with. It's larger, heavier, and that kind of thing. The other thing is, if you're new to fiberglass, it's messy. The resin is very sticky. It gets everywhere. You're going to want tarps out. The matting, once it gets the resin in it, is very sticky as well. And it can generally get everywhere until you kind of get familiar with it and know what you're doing with it. And the worst disadvantage of this is the vapors from the resin and the dust from sanding this stuff is very, very toxic. You can really hurt yourself. You really need to make sure you're doing it in a well-ventilated location, or that you have proper protection, like a mask or something like that, and that if you're sanding, you clean up all the dust. Don't leave it around anywhere where you're going to be because you can breathe it in later and it can really mess you up.
Also, one more thing.
Go ahead.
I would recommend using gloves as well.
Yes, definitely.
Otherwise, you're gonna be spending hours trying to scratch this stuff off.
Yes, if you get the stuff on your hands, there's very little you can really do to get it off other than just trying to scrub your body with acetone, which is not a good idea either. So definitely wear gloves. All right, go on to the next. Now this is the material that I use most for pretty much all of my builds now. I still use a little bit of the other materials, but this is the stuff I find that has the best balance for what I try to do. This is Sintra PVC foam sheets. Sintra is a brand name. It's not always sold under that name. It's often just sold as extruded PVC foam, usually with a 50% density. The advantages to this material is it has a nice satin finish. It doesn't need to be altered or anything for the paint. It's waterproof. It's lightweight and easy to bond. And it can be shaped with a heat gun or hot water. You don't necessarily have to have a heat gun to shape this material. The disadvantages, it's structurally weak in comparison to fiberglass. This stuff is not that durable. If you were to fall or a part were to just drop from like arm height, there's a good chance that something's going to snap or crack. And it can be damaged with extended exposure to intense sunlight and heat. In my first build, I actually left my Gundam hands in the back window of my car, and when I came back, they had kind of turned into sausage fingers. Just because, not the heat itself, but the heat coming through the window and then baking it. Like if I was just standing out in the sun here, nothing's gonna happen, it's all fine. But extended periods, especially in intense heat, can damage the material. Found materials. This is always a very important thing because a lot of times, it doesn't matter what you have, the best thing is not something that's always immediately obvious. Dixie cups, plastic wine glasses, shot glasses, make great booster nozzles. This has been like a thing with me because every time I go to a contest, they're like, what did you make the boosters out of? Dixie cups. And inevitably, they mention Dixie cups first when it comes to materials. And it's like, it's not made completely out of Dixie cups. But a good example is the booster nozzles on the back skirt of this are champagne glasses and small Dixie shot glasses. And it's always good to use stuff like that, especially for rounded parts if you can find them, because rounded parts are tough to make. It's much easier just to use it if it's already existing. Oh, there we go. Cardboard tubes. Cardboard tubes are great. I use cardboard tubes for cannon barrels and smokestacks. My Alt-Eisen's gun barrel over there, my assistant can hand it to me. That's just 3 cardboard tubes, painted, sanded, so you can't see that little circular ridge that's usually in it, and sanded smooth and then painted. That's all they are. Keeps them lightweight, and I didn't have to pay a dime for them. Just use some paper towels. Water bottle caps. I find these are great. These make great dials, knobs, switches, and things. The dials on the mic sounder's chest were just painted water cap bottles. The Alt-Eisen's chest has 2 of them, each leg here. Water cap bottle. Just painted gray and with a black line across it. And they look great. They work perfectly for it. And honestly, I've never had anyone notice, so it works good for me. Now the secret's out, now everyone's going to mention that next time I'm in a contest. Made with water bottles. Found materials, exactly as it says. If you're in a neighborhood near an industrial area, ask a local warehouse if they have cardboard they're throwing out. These places generate tons of it, and usually they're just throwing it out. Some bigger places recycle it, but honestly most don't. And that's also a great place to go for round things, like these parts here on the side of my thigh, the joint. That's the top of a roll of shrink wrap from a warehouse, just with a hole cut in it so I can put a strap through it, and it works perfectly as a joint. And it looks good too. And it's another thing, it's a perfectly round shape. Round shapes are difficult to make, so you might as well use something that already exists. But just as much as you can. You know, if you see, walk around your house or walk through a dollar store and see what you're looking at, and sometimes the idea will be just the lightning bolt will strike you and you'll see a part that is perfect for what you need. All right? Tools. This is pretty self-explanatory. Not all of these tools you'll need for every project, but it's always a good idea to have some of these. First thing is first, workspace. A garage, a basement, even something as simple as a table or floor space. For these kind of costumes, you're going to need a lot of space to work with, and for eventual storage once you're done with it. My living room is like a hangar exploded. It's not pretty. I wouldn't recommend you guys follow my method on that one. Be more organized than me. Hobby knives, various sizes of them are always good to have. Tape measures, rulers, yardsticks for measuring things. You're going to need those. Scissors, a sketch pad, hot glue, and glue sticks. Even though I don't bond most of this with hot glue and glue sticks, I use it frequently, especially for like quick repairs and for folds to like reinforce the back of them. So like if an edge gets hit, if it cracks, it still doesn't completely break. So it'll still hold together at least for a while on the floor until I have a chance to fix it more fully later. Velcro, everything. Velcro, use Velcro. Velcro, Velcro, Velcro. Velcro is your friend. All this is attached with Velcro. All this, Velcro. Everything is Velcro. And the other thing I'd recommend with Velcro, don't bond it from one side. Bind it from both, from above and below. So that if one comes off, you're secured on both sides. A good example of that would be right here, this cod piece. There's a strap. This looks really bad. It's bonded from the top and from the back, you see? So if one comes off, it's still gonna hold. Because you'll constantly have people bumping into you, things will get knocked around, maybe it is you're passing through a doorway or something, and you want to keep it as secure as possible, so use lots of Velcro. You can get that at Joann's, they sell it in big rolls. It's a little bit expensive, the Velcro, but one roll will usually last you a long time, because you don't need a whole lot of it if you're doing the double bond method. Clear, duct, and masking tape. Even on this costume, I'm still using duct tape in various places because it's just that good. Duct tape bonds anything. It holds forever. I mean, come on. Especially the Gorilla Tape brand, if you get a hold of that. That stuff is great. That's holding part of my torso together that came apart earlier. And it's like, I could do a proper repair, but the Gorilla Tape holds better. Leave the Gorilla Tape. Masking tape. Masking tape I use a lot for the mock-up builds, because it's quick and easy to work with. I can quickly readjust where the part needs to be with it. And it's also, if you're working with foam board, it's really great for sealing edges, so masking tape. I buy tons of masking tape, it's great. A lot of people don't use it a lot for builds, but for some reason it just works really well for me. Sanding block and sandpaper. Sanding block, there's a couple options for these. At Home Depot, they sell like these blue sponges that have a grit of sandpaper to them, and the idea being you can just wash them and reuse them. I don't find those to be that great because it seems like the grit they say on the box is never actually what they work like. So what I usually do is I'll buy one and then just put actual sandpaper on the outside and use the block. And the block just makes it easier to control it when you're sanding. 1mm cardboard sheets or heavyweight cardstock. If you're going to do mock-ups or any kind of part you're going to be making to size and make sure it fits first, 1mm cardboard or heavyweight cardstock is the way to go. For heavyweight cardstock, it's just the kind of stuff you would get in any kind of office supply store. It's for like making wedding invitations, that kind of thing. 1mm cardboard, you can either buy it from like a warehouse supply company like Uline. You can buy tons of it for cheap, or if you don't need too much of it, check some of the industrial districts around where you live and you can get a couple sheets usually for free because places just throw it away. Paints. I always use Rust-Oleum brand spray paint because I find it's toughest, and it sells for cheap, and I like their red, especially their red is really bright. I like that red. Mirror and a camera, just if you don't have someone to take pictures of you so you can make sure something fits or looks right, make sure you have these because you'll be doing lots of adjusting. A heat gun. A heat gun is kind of like a hairdryer on steroids. I don't recommend you actually use it on your head. Make great grilled cheese sandwiches at cons though. Heat guns are really useful if you're going to be working with EVA because you can heat up EVA and bend it a little bit. You can also heat up Sintra, but I find it's better to use hot water because the heat gun gets a little too hot and the Sintra can start to warp if you get it too hot. A rotary tool, aka a Dremel. A rotary tool is a bit more powerful though. It's usually wired. It's not run by a battery. You'll want a rotary tool if you're doing any kind of high volume sanding, or especially if you're going to try to sand EVA. A rotary tool will do you wonders in terms of time saving versus doing it by hand. And lastly, if you want to get fancy, an airbrush to do paint details. This costume, only thing is airbrushed is the hands. So it all depends on how you want your guy to you're done, because you do not want to breathe in any of that fiberglass material or anything like that. Also important, especially if you're using a rotary tool, eye protection. And I don't mean just put on your pair of glasses. Get a proper pair of goggles or mask or some kind of eye shield. Because if you're working with a rotary tool, parts of those sanding wheels can fly off and they'll cut through just about anything. I've seen them go right through some cheaper masks too, so don't cheap out on that regard. Gloves, either heavy-duty mechanics gloves. I like those because I still have a lot of tactile sense in them, and they're tougher than the latex gloves. I don't get that clammy feeling you usually get with latex gloves. And all this stuff is cheap. A mask, you spend $30 on a mask, it'll outlive you. Just replace the filters every now and again. Right? Suiting up. Okay. Costumes like this will usually attach to your body in a variety of different ways. One big thing I use is a weightlifting belt. I'm wearing it underneath the Zentai suit. You can kind of see parts of it. There you go. And that works as a good basis to either bind your armor from, because you can just either Velcro to it, or it gives you like a point of tension to hold parts to. And also, if you're wearing a heavy suit, it's going to do wonders for your back. It's a good idea to use them. Those are easily attainable any Home Depot. They're like $20. They come in all sizes. I recommend you get one. All right, dense upholstery foam can be useful for holding parts in place to your body with tension. Let me get an example of this. Why don't you hand me the stake arm? Upholstery foam, you'd see it in like Michael's or Joann's. It's that green, dense foam that you use in like patio furniture and that kind of thing. What you can do with it, at least what I do, is I paint it black with spray paint, and then I use it on the inside of my builds. Like you can see here on the inside, it's all this black foam, and that just holds it to my body in the place where I need it. The advantage is once it's there, especially on this Lycra undersuit, it doesn't move. It won't move at all. So it's on there, it's rigid, it's tough. It'll put up with just about anything. The only thing with that is it does get a little hot, but you know, you gotta sacrifice something, right? And then of course the method I mentioned on there earlier is the Velcro, attaching it from above and below. I cannot stress that enough. I had so much stuff fall off of old builds in the past because I didn't get this right. Alright, testing. Before committing to a design, it is always a good idea to do some cheap mock-ups. 1mm cardboard is a great medium for this. Make sure the parts fit and look right and interact with each other correctly. Once you are confident the part is good, you can transfer the pattern over to your actual materials. Especially if you're using Pepakura, you can easily transfer those paper sheets it prints out to cardboard and build it up and then see, okay, this arm fits. That cardboard cost me a couple dollars. Now I can go ahead and make it out of fiberglass, or I can make it out of Sintra, now that I know it fits and everything. Especially too, is it's good for identifying the scale, to make sure you got the scaling right. Is the head too big? Is the torso the right size? If you build it in paper first, or cardboard, you can look at it, and it's a lot easier to tell than it is just looking at a screen. You got to eyeball some of it, you know? It's much easier that way, in my opinion. Okay? Oh, question?
When you're using fiberglass, do you use the Pepakura as like, when you do the paper, do you like use that as a base and put the fiberglass on top of it, or?
I've never built anything like that, like just doing paper and then fiberglassing the paper.
Yeah.
It's just not the method that I prefer to use. A lot of people use it, it works really well. Most Iron Man or Halo suits you see, it started as a paper base and they fiberglassed it. Because once the resin permeates that paper you can sand just like anything else. It becomes the resin essentially. And then they just cover that with Bondo to smooth it all out. So, usually what I do is I just use fiberglass to reinforce other parts. Okay? Travel. This is always the the interesting part, is getting this stuff around. I'm actually from Pompano Beach, so I'm about 4 or 5 hours away. Most of the time when I'm out, I have to use a rental van to get the suit around. So it gets a little bit pricey. That's why I don't go to as many cons as I'd like. I actually shipped my Galgagar to California last year for their Anime Expo. and that cost me over $600 both ways. Totally worth it. I got to be on stage at Anime Expo. It's totally worth it. But that actually brings us to a good point, and this is kind of involved with the planning as well. When you're designing your costume, try to think of ways you're going to be able to break it down, or ways that parts can fit into one another. Like with this guy I'm wearing here, these legs, they're huge, but they're all hollow. So at the end of the day, the hands go inside here, the thighs go in here, the biceps go inside here, the wiring, the chargers for the speakers, everything goes inside the legs. Same thing for the waist. The waist is a circle, so I just stick one of the arms inside and then it just goes right in the van. As much as you can, try to condense things down. For like my Gagagar, the giant hammer weapon was actually hollow, and when I shipped it, half the costume was stuffed inside there with packing peanuts. So I did this received giant hammer and the robot was inside of it. But for this trip, I actually had 2 different vehicles, especially. If you have a friend to help you transport stuff, and if you're willing to help them out with some gas, definitely do that as well. Is June around? My buddy June helped me get the suit here this year, so I was going to have everyone give him a round of applause. I think he's still recovering from the pool party last night. The common floor. This is more Shirley's area or Star's area.
All right, so when you go to any convention, it's good to at least, if you're going to decide whether you're going to do the costume all 3 days, if you're going to do it 2 days. Either way, try to go before the convention starts, before there's crowds of people, and scout out the area. You want to see where you can move, locations you probably need help going through, locations you probably just want to avoid in general, halls you may potentially block. It is also good to have a handler. Usually more than one is preferred, but one is good. Try to have at least one. Preferably someone you're close to, someone who's probably know the costume as well as you do.
I don't know anyone like that.
Me neither. So essentially maybe someone you live with, i.e. us. And this person is pretty much going to be your lifeline. They're going to pretty much maneuver you through crowds, through the halls, watch for debris, grab any bottles, anything that might be on the floor, little raises that you might essentially bump and fall and break your costume with. They're also going to be kind of crowd control, because you are going to get tired of standing in one place for a million photos. Whichever handler you have to make sure that they'll at least put their foot down. They might piss off a lot of people, but if you need a break, you need a break. Especially if it's a bathroom break, or you really need water because you're dehydrated or hungry. You just have to have that handler put their foot down and kind of guide you through it and help you the rest of the way. It does upset some people. There's been plenty of times where people are upset because they want the full ensemble with helmet, but he needs to breathe. I'm just like, come back later. He's only human. He's not really a robot.
Yeah.
Now. And also, I suggest your handler have something to kind of make it stand out in the crowd. In this case, I got the big poofy pink pom-poms going on. For a SuperCon in Miami, I was on Ryuko from Kill la Kill, so I had my scissor blade waving about in the crowd. We're trying to find a way where people could identify me as the mecha handler / engineer, because a lot of times people look at you like, who are you and why are you telling me not to take photos? We've tried having signs that says, no photos please.
No one listens to the signs.
They would take photos of the giant robot holding a sign that says, no photos please. Good job showing that to your friends and family. It's like, oh, look what I did. You look like a jerk. So definitely someone that you're close with. If you have multiple people who just want to stick around with you and they can kind of do the whole entourage thing and kind of guide you through the halls, hey, that works too. But at least one person at all times, someone who's going to look at your costume, notice if there's anything off, if there's any damages, they can point it out. If there's, I was about to say, if there's smaller kids, sometimes parents get overeager or just tourists, because Orlando, Miami is big tourist locations. They won't even ask, they'll just place the little kid right in the front, not even knowing the robot's going to move. I had someone put a baby Goku right in the middle of him, probably a crawler, someone that can't even walk yet, and he didn't even see it. So just keep in mind to pay attention to kids and anything. Try to encourage your handler to let you know if there's someone coming in for a photo shoot.
Yeah, there was something she said that bears repeating, especially in Orlando, is there are tons of paid costume mascots, especially in this part of town. And a lot of tourists don't really know, there's an event going on and things like that. These people are not professionals. So if you're in costume and people approach you, you got to be very aware, especially of the little kids, of things like language barriers and things like that, because a lot of people, they're not going to be able to tell the difference. I've had a lot of little kids run up to me and stuff like that because their parents are just like, oh, go get a picture with Optimus Prime or whatever. And I won't notice the kid's there because I can't see, and I'll accidentally bump the kid, and there's nothing worse than that, so avoid it as much as you can.
Also, make sure your handler is with you at all times. If for some reason your handler needs a bathroom break, stay in place and try to avoid contact with people. There's many times where I will walk off to check to see if panel rooms or use the restroom or get something to drink, and I come back and some disaster has happened. Either someone tried diving through his leg, someone broke a shield, and just for 30 seconds I was away, something happened. So just make sure someone's there at all times, or you stay perfectly still and try to limit any sort of contact with people until they return.
There was an incident in Supercom where she was on a bathroom break and I had a guy in a Gumby suit charge at me full speed and try to power slide between my legs. I don't know what the heck he thought he was trying to accomplish. It terrified me. I thought for certain I was going to fall on him and kill him.
Oh, God.
All right, so we're kind of running a little bit over here, but I'm going to try to go over my method for how I work with Sintra step by step. This is my Gundam Mark II helmet. You might have seen me walking around with it the other days if you were here. I built this in about a week and a half to quickly build something and document my method from beginning to end to show you guys how I do my particular method and hopefully answer a lot of questions I usually get. First step, if you got a Pepakura model, in this case I did. This is a Pepakura model of the Gundam Mark II by Ete, who is a Pepacraft modeler. First step is to isolate the parts you need. All the parts here on the side, those are isolated. That's just the helmet. As you can see from the picture on the other side, it's actually a full model. But for this part, all I needed was the helmet. So, first thing, isolated the helmet. Next step, paper mock-ups. This is what I'm always preaching about for mock-ups. You'll see more than one here. That's because I print out one first, a simple one, just a core part to see how it looks. And then I can take it and say, okay, how much bigger does this need to be? The second one, the simpler one, the bigger one on the side, that's the second one, okay? Now I can put this on. Does it seem like it fits right? Maybe it needs to be a little bit bigger, etc. What you can do with this, and what I've started doing, is I take the paper first helmet, just hold it up in front of my head and take a picture of that, put it into Photoshop, and literally measure the pixels of my head versus the paper one, and how much bigger percentage it needs to be to fit over my head. That's the method that I think that I've come up with that seems to work best for what I do. All right? Once you've got your scale finalized, it's a little bit hard to see because this is black lines on white and they're tiny little lines. You can transfer the pattern over to the plastic material, in this case, the Sintra. You can see all the different parts there are just cut out and taped on to the sheet of plastic with Scotch tape. All right? Now you cut them all out, and you have all your parts sorted out. Now, a Pepakura model folds along certain edges, and that's how you get the shape. You'll see some parts are bent. You don't cut the part fully, you just score it with the knife, and then you can bend it. This is where you use the hot water. You can dip the part in hot water, make it soft, score that line, bend it really easily on that line. You'll also see some of the parts at the bottom have that yellow masking tape I like to use. You bond it all together with that yellow masking tape, and that helps it keep a shape before you actually start binding together the glue. Go ahead. All right. These helmets at the top, it's all bonded together either with masking tape or clear tape. There's no actual glue on this yet. You can actually see on the second picture where it has the V crest, there's some Scotch tape holding it all together. Those glues on the bottom, this is what I use to bond all my stuff. It's Slow Zap CA glue. It's basically a very heavy, thick gel super glue. The stuff on the side, Zap Kicker, you can get in a small spray can or a small aerosol. You spray it on this glue, and within a few seconds, it bonds really tight and really hard. It gets really hot though when you do that. So if you touch it, you'll burn yourself. So make sure you're very careful with this stuff. That accelerator can really mess you up. So after I put that accelerator in and put the glue in and all the edges where it meets are bonded, next is to smooth it out and get all the gaps and little pop marks filled from building it. The kind of putty you see there, Tamiya putty, this is just something I use for model kits, and I find it works great for these costumes as well. Tamiya putty, you can find it at most hobby stores. They have generic store brands as well that most hobby stores sell. It comes in different colors, usually greens, whites, or grays, and that helps you see it against whatever material you're working on, because those are uncommon colors. You can see there where the side of the vent is touching the helmet. I've just pushed it all in along the crack with my finger so that putty gets all in there, and then I can sand away the excess, and I ended up with a smooth part that looks like it's a single piece. Okay, go ahead. Now, the top part you see there is the V-crest and the faceplate. That's after they've been gap filled. The next step I do is to go ahead and prime them all and sand them again. Primer, dual purpose. One, it's going to show you any kind of errors you made, because it's that gray color. Any little areas you might have missed when you were filling are going to show up right away. And the other advantage is it's going to make your paint adhere really, really well. Your paint's going to stick much better to that primer than it will just a straight plastic. The visor you see there on the bottom. Visor material is kind of hard to come by. There's more places now than when I started, but it's still kind of hard to find exactly what you need. In the past, what I would do a lot is, you ever go to Party City around Halloween, and they got those really cheap Halo 3 Master Chief masks with the gold film? I just ripped the film out of that for $10, and now I got 2 eyes. This stuff here I got from a place called Icon Props on Etsy. They sell sheets of the material in different colors now. This was just like a few weeks ago, so I was so glad when this came out for SuperCon, because I needed new eyes. The material, you can see out of it if there's no light behind it, i.e. a dark helmet, and they can't see in. All they'll see is a mirror reflection of whatever color and material you bought. So this stuff is great. If you can get a hold of it, you know, one sheet from this Etsy store is $20, and one sheet will do you tons of Gundam eyes. It won't do you as many full like helmet visors, because those are obviously more material, but $20 and the vision is much, much better. I definitely swear by this stuff. Use it if you can get it. If you just need 2 eyes, like I said, it's cheap too. If you just go to Party City, get one of those Halo masks, rip that gold stuff out of there, and it works perfectly fine. And that's it for the helmet build. I guess I must have skipped the painting picture. Sorry on that one. I guess I'll just see if anyone has any questions at this point. Is there any other questions about particular materials or anything I might have missed? Yes, sir?
Yeah, when you print out the paper stuff, it seems like you print it out on pretty thick paper. Is there a special printer?
No, actually I just use a standard, regular home printer. Some cheaper ones will probably have trouble with heavier cardstock. And when you're transferring the pattern over, you actually don't need to use the cardstocks.
Doing a cosplay of a character, I can't find any type of profiles for.
Okay, what's the character?
Optimal Optimus for these.
Optimal Optimus. Okay, here's the thing a lot of people don't use. If the character ever appeared in a video game, you can get the model ripped from the video game, and you can use Pepakura Designer or Blender to transfer it into a format that will work in PEP. And from there you can get some kind of a basis. Now, it's not going to be perfect because it's not designed for PEP, but it's a good starting place.
If I had to freehand it, what would be?
If you had to freehand it, I just recommend cardboard and grid paper. If you can get like that grid paper, you know, like they use it for designing. You probably use it a lot if you were ever in any art classes in school. But grid paper is great for making patterns. Goldie and Clive extensively use grid paper for their mock-ups, and they'll just have something attached to their body, measure out, draw a pattern, and cut it out from there. Expect to do a lot of mock-ups, a lot of I don't like this, throw it away, test again, throw it away, test again. It's if you want to look good, expect that it's going to take you some time to get it freehand. I mean, you can do it, but it just takes more time. That's really the only difference, in my opinion, between doing PEP and freehand. Is it's a matter of time and how much effort you're willing to put into it. PEP is just, it's giving you, a guideline. It's kind of like you can have all the parts in your backyard for a 747 and an instruction manual, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to build that 747. You know what I mean? All right. You in the back there? Yeah, you.
No, he was first.
Oh, you then.
I want to know exactly what you do with the game that high under you.
Oh, right. Yes, I actually didn't mention that part. I'm actually not this tall. I'm on stilts. They're just wooden platforms, really simple wooden platforms I made. If you want to use wooden platforms, a few things. Get some practice in them, and they're not that comfortable, at least not the kind I make. I'm not that good at it yet. And something I found out the hard way, here's another little horror story, is this is also kind of in relation to the proportions. Most robots have really wide stances and stuff like that. So to try and get that with my Galgagar, the feet were flat on the bottom, but slanted like this at the top where my feet actually attached to the stilt. So at all times it looked like I was standing wider. It looked really good, but it was essentially like wearing sideways high heels all weekend. And it got to the point where it was so bad when I was actually on stage at Anime Expo, I had lost both my big toenails, and my socks were soaked with blood while I was on stage. I would not recommend that people do that. Newfound respect for anyone that wears high heels, okay? I would not want to be in that situation again. So these ones are just straight. You can see there's no gap. There's a gap between the heel and the toe. That's because there's only a stilt on the front where my toes are and on the back where my heel is. The middle is empty. So that's kind of like a balance I found for the stilt, to still make it look like a giant robot foot without having a big wooden block in the middle. You know, it's still kind of uncomfortable. You know, the toe still kind of hurts, but you know, it's just something you kind of have to put up with in that case. There are some guys out there that do full-on like stilts. You know, like the ones with springs and everything in them. I'm not that confident walking around in one of these with those on yet, so I haven't gotten that far.
I'm just interrupting here. Anyone who came in a little late, we are having a raffle in the next few minutes. All you have to do is fill out your name, fold it, and put it in a helmet. And we're kind of raffling off this helmet because the panel, we're supposed to end in 5 minutes. So while he's answering questions, if anyone who hasn't done so wants to do so, I can definitely do that.
Yes, if you haven't done that yet, please do so now. All right, buddy, right here.
Any tricks for?
Oh, sorry, I'm losing track.
That's okay.
Let me do him because I know he had asked first. Sorry. Go ahead.
With bigger rounded parts, obviously some small parts like thrusters that work.
Right.
When you have like a dome shape, what do you kind of use for that? I know that doesn't really happen in this.
Right. What I actually had to get very, very good at that very quickly with the Alt-Eisen because he's got a lot more rounded parts than I was usually used to, especially the sides of the legs here in the back.
Oh yeah.
You can see that's all rounded.
Yeah.
Rounded shapes are a pain to do correctly. So what I will do, what I did with this, sorry, I'm trying to turn around without getting all these cords caught. What I did with this is I cut out the part and I took a ton of tape, a ton of masking tape, especially the big kind, the 2-inch wide, and I used that to grab onto the part and pull it in the direction I needed to bend. Bond it, and then quickly start bonding it together with the glue, and that tension from the tape is what holds it in the shape. If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, well, the problem I'm having is I'm thinking like Space Marine or Garen from League of Legends. They've got big shoulder pads that are rounded completely.
Well,
It's like fiberglass over.
well, no, actually, I was just going to mention that. A lot of people use cardboard to do that. Like, if you have a base, like say you're doing like the pauldron of a Space Marine suit, where it's that perfect curve. If you were to take like cardboard shapes of circles, like quarter circles, and make that line inside, and then fill that up with like expanding foam, and then bondo that, and then smooth that. But you cut like those half circle shapes in various ascending and then descending sizes.
Like ribs.
Yeah, like ribs, and it gives you like a basis to build onto, you know what I mean?
That's a good idea.
I've seen a couple guys do it. I've never done it that way personally, but when I saw someone else do that, it made the model kit builder inside me just scream with joy. It was like, that was perfect.
Yeah.
All right? I hope that helps. Okay?
Any tricks for LEDs and like motors for moving parts?
For that, I do a lot of found stuff for lights. Like my Galagar had a lighted G-stone in the head. It was LED throwy lights. Just like little LEDs hooked up to watch batteries. just literally electric glued together and stuck in the back of the little gem in the head. For the eyes in the chest of the Gavagar, I used EL tape, which is really popular for use in like Tron costumes and stuff like that. And that stuff's, if you have to do lighting, that's one of the ways I would recommend going, because it's easy to get. You don't have to do any soldering. You can usually just buy whatever length you need online, and you hook it up to the power box, and then you're done. It's a great option. It's just, if you Google EL tape or EL wire, that's a great option. If you have to do LEDs, you know, and you want to have like very particular setup, you're going to have to, you're going to have to get into some kind of soldering. You know, you're going to have to do a little bit of research on how to do that particular part. So I always just recommend, if you have the option, found materials or something that already is wired up to work when it gets to you, like EL tape. And for the motors, like my Alt-Eisen's gun arm has reciprocating cannon barrels. Those are just toy guns inside with that false barrel shell on top. And I get the double edge there because it makes sound effects right out of the box. Right? Any other questions?
Yeah, two really quick questions
Sure.
and a recommendation. Working with a Citra,
Yeah.
when you're cutting it out, did you just use like the hobby knives?
Yes, hobby knives or box cutters. If you're going to use a box cutter, get one with a quick release button on the front, because you're going to want to change those blades every couple of cuts to make it easy on you, and get a pack of replacement blades. If you're going to use the small like X-Acto knives, just be careful, because Citra's not like, it's not soft. It's kind of rigid, so if you try to do a curved part, you can snap those very thin blades, and those things can, you know, get left in like your carpet, and you not realize it, and they can cut you off. So just be careful when you're working with the thinner blades, would be my recommendation.
And where do you find your models to do the puppet burrow?
A lot of times, you know, you can just find the models on Google. You know, you Google, you'll be able to find it. But a lot of times too is you have to buy some of these models from their modelers to get access to the unlocked file to actually change scale and stuff like that. Most of them don't do that, but some do, in which case you'll have to get in touch with the modeler to get an unlocked copy. And my other recommendation, I might have forgot to mention this earlier, is if you're going to use a PET file, just make sure you credit whatever 3D modeler originally made the file. Like this suit is based on a 3D file by the modeler Ete, the same guy with my helmet on.
And the recommendation, because I work a lot in metal armor, for heavy parts, like for heavy helmets, a really nice cheap padding, yoga mats.
Yeah.
Like those little.
That's the EVA foam.
Well,
EVA
it's the really thick foamed yoga mats, the $20 ones at Walmart. They're very flexible.
Yeah.
But they cushion extremely well.
I know it's only one.
Yeah, I have it on the bottom of my shoes actually for traction. Okay. Anyone else? Any last questions? Okay, buddy here.
On the screen, but having a kit of the bigger help.
Yes.
I was asking if you had it would be best to have all these separated, like you know, or what else?
For me, actually, especially with Alt-Eisen, there's just kind of emotional support. Like I had it on my desk looking at me, and it's just like, don't you give up, kid. Don't you give up, kid. No, but it's like, it's good to see, more than anything, for like how the parts interact, you know, because well, like how's the arm move here? Will this bump that if I do this certain movement, you know what I mean? And it's also like the Gundam beam rifle and shield, that was just, I looked at the toy, measured it out with a ruler, and expanded the scale from there. You know what I mean? That's what it's also good for. That's a little bit harder with more complex things, obviously. But all right, I'm officially over time now. What time is it? All right, maybe one more question. Anyone else?
All right, last thing, I promise.
Okay.
It has to be the last thing.
Sure.
What do you use for like the bottom of the shoes? Like what was that?
Hang on one second. Let me show you. Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
That's EVA foam. Cool. That just gives me some traction on cardboard. I mean, traction on carpet. All right, I'm going to choose now who the winner of this helmet is.
You guys excited?
Yeah.
Let me close my eyes.
I'm gonna pick you.
All right. I wish I had one of these for everyone. Oh. Edward Middleton.
Wow.
That's you. Wow, dude, I was talking to you yesterday telling you to come here to get a chance to win this, and here you are. Hang on, she's got to get rid of all the others. I'm sorry, anyone who didn't get one. I would build 1 million of these and give them to everyone if I could.
Maybe next panel, guys.
I'm just going to fill a car full of helmets, no costume. All right. Yeah, put it on.
Anyone want to find out?
Is it? Yeah, it's too big.
Hang on a second. Come over here, let me give you a hand. I think I might know how to
Make it a test.
We got this.
We don't need some ears.
See?
Wow.
I can see you.
You should get it bigger.
That's like a knife.
Can you see?
Yeah, okay.
All right. It's so small. You look great on a shelf.
Alright, thank you guys for coming to the giant
Thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully I'll be here again next year and I'll have something else to give everyone.
Yay!
Hope it was informative.
Yes.
I hope I didn't make too big of a fool of myself.
We also have business cards here if you want to follow him on Debian or
Yes, if you want to follow me, I have some business cards with my info. You can come here
and
and get.
email him any questions.
All right. Thanks.
Awesome, man.
Oh.
Everything okay with the camera?
It's on still.
Oh, whoops. Why? It's over.
We will also have the PowerPoint posted on his Facebook if you want to go back for references on materials and tools. Also, feel free to message him at any point if you have any questions on your giant robot costume. Enjoy the rest of AFO.
Oh, okay.